genuinely carried me through my research last year. Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, I'm V and I'm a fourth year medical student from Sunderland, and for today's video I'm going to tell you my best resources that have got me through 3 years of med school. I'm going to kind of timestamp them down below just to make your lives a bit easier. Don't you worry, I've got you. I'm going to separate it into preclinical, clinical, osces, anatomy and flashcardy related stuff. So without further ado, let's get on with the video. Start with preclinical years. So preclinical years usually teach you a lot of biology, immunology, cellular based stuff, and a lot about like pathogens. So things that kind of you might have learned at A level that is being worked on, or if you didn't do biology at A level, you're probably going to sit there and struggle like I did, because I didn't do biology. So I had to go to the internet to find out what I needed to know and how to understand all the basics that I didn't learn when I was 17, 18. So I'm going to list you guys a few YouTube channels that have helped me visualize, understand, comprehend and retain all this information over the last 3 years. The first kind of YouTube channel I would happily recommend is Amanda Hasidigan. He does drawings and visuals on pathologies of different conditions and stuff like that. He explains things quite well. It can go from like cellular stuff to more complex pathogens. So he covers a lot on his YouTube channel and they're all very well explained. They're very short and concise videos as well. Sums up everything pretty well and tells you exactly what you need to know. And following from that, I would also recommend someone called Ninja Nerd, who is an American doctor, if I'm correct. Like really super long videos, but they are super helpful for those who don't have a foundation of biology. I never really understood when I was in year 1 and year 2, and he'd simplified them and made everything so super easy and simple to follow. He also does go into some more clinical stuff as well in those same videos. So realistically, you're only watching about half of it if you're in your preclinical years. So he was so helpful, and he genuinely carried me through my research last year. So the last resource in terms of preclinical I'll recommend would be osmosis. A lot of you might have seen and heard of osmosis if you were looking at conditions during your A levels, or perhaps you're already at uni. And they've got really concise like revision sheets per condition. And although they do it on a free trial basis, you can usually find them on the internet for free, but their YouTube videos are super helpful if the kind of, how do I explain it, the like cheat sheet version of it isn't online and you've got to pay for it. The YouTube videos are just as good. You're not missing out. If you don't have to pay 200 something a year, you'll get more than enough resources with like the 3 that I've mentioned combined. Whilst you're also in your preclinical years, you will see that in PBL you will do a lot of pharmacology. Now, back when we were in first year, we thought pharmacology meant just saying the side effects of the drug and what it was. Like, for instance, you've got paracetamol, it's a painkiller. Yeah, it might make you a bit constipated, but apparently that is not what you need to know at med school. At med school, you need to know the mechanism of action, how it works more on a cellular level, its pharmacokinetics and its pharmacodynamics. And for that, the 2 best resources I will give you for anything pharmacology related would have to be the BNF, which is super helpful, and it's something that you're going to use like later on in your practice, as well as something called Drug Bank, which literally just tells you exactly what the drug does. So definitely the 2 best resources I would use for pharmacology. Just a FYI, everything, well, most of the things I'm going to mention is going to be free, because FYI, I am a broke student and the internet's your oyster. You'll find everything that you need to know on the internet. I'm going to move on to what has helped me through my clinical years, which has only been year 3 so far, and I am sure it will help me for the next 2 years. And the first resource in terms of understanding knowledge and doing all of that kind of stuff would have to be Zero to Finals. Zero to Finals have this website and they've got videos as well on YouTube where you can literally get everything about the pathophysiology, the etiology, the investigations, the management. They've got literally a page for every condition that you'll need to know for your med school finals. So it's super helpful, put into simple words, and it is absolutely free to use, which is just amazing. Similarly to that, Pulse Notes is also a similar website. You can do kind of roughly the same thing. Still a free resource, still really good. Different kind of interface, but like I like the both of them. Along that kind of note, another really good YouTube resource to use is Resus Med. It follows a very similar pattern to Zero to Finals and Pulse Notes, but it does more YouTube video stuff, and it is always recommended on Pulse Med, which I'll come to in a bit. But yeah, those are my top 3 like YouTube resources I use for my clinical year so far. They have helped me a ton understand like the pathophys and why you would do certain things and why you would manage patient a certain way, and explaining all the stuff behind the pathophys as well. It is super helpful. The next resource I would happily recommend is the Oxford Handbook of Clinical Medicine, or whatever specialty you're doing. Now when I was on mental health, I lived and breathed using the Oxford Handbook of Psychiatry, and it helped me understand every core condition to a T. And I did the same for pediatrics, and I did the same for cardio as well. So that's super helpful. You can buy like the pocket edition books and have them in your scrubs if you're on that specialty, if you really want to, but that is money and I don't have much of that right now. So what I tend to do is try and go on the internet to find a PDF version of the most latest Oxford Handbook, and that will suffice you enough. As long as you back it up with like further knowledge that's a bit more recent, you're definitely going to have all the right kind of facts, figures, and management and investigations and things like that. So the Oxford Handbook is super useful, and sometimes it does have questions in them, so you can always test yourself as you go along, which is so key in year 3. So the next 2 resources are the ones that we all live and breathe by in the lead up to exams, during exam season, way before exam season, and that is passmed and quesmed. Now these 2 are such good resources which have thousands and thousands of questions of like in question banks about all the stuff that you could get tested on in your finals. They do have preclinical stuff and they do have clinical stuff, but I tend to only use it when I was in year 3 because the questions that were on the banks don't quite align with the ones we got at Sunderland. So in years 1 and 2 it didn't seem like it'd be right to pay, but now that I'm in year 3 and this is kind of what we need to do and what we need to know, passmed and quesmed have been paid for. Best way to understand and learn from your mistakes is to test yourself, revise the stuff you don't know, keep going at it and just working on it, trying to understand the patterns, trying to understand how to interpret stuff, like just recognizing patterns and repetition and all of that stuff is super helpful when you're in year 3. Now flashcards definitely was the way I did revision when I was in A levels, and it seems to be the case that every year when exam season comes I just go to make flashcards on the stuff that I don't know. So I tend to use Quizlet and Anki for when I get conditions wrong on passmed, convert them to Anki and then I can test myself, whereas some people might just be an Ankiing and a Quizlet person the entire year, and that really depends on the kind of learner you are. Quizlet's completely free. Obviously online you can access so many people's pre-made decks, you can make your own decks, you can use certain features on there as well that are super easy to use, and the user interface is super nice, and it does help with like the repetition and the understanding of the content. But with Anki, which is probably more used by a lot of medical students, it is a bit fiddly to start with. You have to add certain add-ons and it is free on like desktop, but if you want it on your phone or iPad when you're on the go, you do need to pay like £25, I think it was the last time I checked. I'm probably wrong, but definitely I would recommend the 2. Even if just having them handy is super useful when you're in the bus, when you're traveling to and from placement, when you're just really bored and you sat on your phone and you probably don't want to go on TikTok, just open up Anki and just do a few questions. But yeah, those are very 2 good kind of flashcardy resources when it comes to the knowledge part to help like do that active recall spaced repetition that everyone keeps talking about. It's proven that spaced repetition does really help in active recalling, so yeah. My camera decided to die, so here we are again. Anyways, I completely forgot to tell you guys about anatomy. So the 2 best anatomy resources that have got me through med school over the last 2 years would have to be Teach Me Anatomy, which has a free page online with like every single system and area of like the body in its own sections, and you can click and choose what you need to learn. You can scroll down, it's concise information, it will tell you its clinical relevance. It is such a good resource to just get a good grip and understanding of the anatomy that you've learned in your sessions perhaps, and it is super easy to just like take those pictures, like hide the labels and use them to test yourself. So it's super useful, and it's all color coded, so it makes the learning just so much more better. And then the next resource I would recommend is something that our uni provided for us, but I'm sure loads of med schools do, which is Complete Anatomy. Complete Anatomy is a resource, and it's like an app as well, where you can basically pick apart the human body by yourself. You can isolate certain features, you can click on certain features and get the names of it, the origin of it, like the embryological origin of it. You can get insertion points, and like maybe with like vasculature you can tell where it splits apart, where anastomosis and things like that. You can take apart certain organs, and that was the resource I used in years 1 and 2 to get me through the entirety of anatomy. I used to sit there and like label use those human pictures and label them for my learning and better understanding, and it helped me so much. And they also do YouTube videos where they explain everything as well, which is super useful, and I'll link everything down below. but they are definitely the two best anatomy resources that have got me through. And hands down, the best way to also learn anatomy is to convert any pictures that you have into Anki flashcards, where you can use the image occlusion. I can do that in another video if you guys really want me to, but image occlusion is probably my favourite feature of Anki. It's just absolutely amazing. It tests your recall, it tests your knowledge of knowing where things are. The labels and the lines help so much, so yeah. And with anatomy, I think the best flashcard-ish resource to use for that as well, if you're not using Anki and you prefer something a bit more physical and a bit more paper-like, is the Grey's Anatomy. Is it Grey's Anatomy? The Grey's Anatomy flashcards, like the anatomy flashcards. I'll put a picture of it here. But I use that religiously in years 1 and 2, and it was such a good way to sit there in your room with your flatmates and just look at a card, and you could label, you could both like sit there, write on a page like all the different labels, test each other on it, and like make it a bit of a fun activity. I know medics have a sad life, but it does help, like sitting there doing a flashcard and stuff. If your eyes are strained on your computer or you just want something more physical, then I would definitely recommend the Grey's Anatomy flashcards. The last topic I'm going to go into would be osces. Now, osces are hands down my favourite part of med school. Now, you might think I'm weird, but I completely enjoy the fact that I get to be an actor for an hour in my exams, even though it's the most scariest hour of my life, but we move. Anyways, so Geeky Medics are hands down the best resource to ever use for med school when it comes to osces, especially at Sunderland. So a lot of the way we're taught is using Geeky Medics, using the like tick sheets that are on Geeky Medics. They've got tons and tons of videos on different examinations, different procedures, different history takings. They've also got their like 800 plus osces, 800 plus osces stations that you can pay for, that will give you scenarios for your osces. So what I would completely recommend is that if you're in years 1 and 2, to just stick to the free version, and then when you get into your clinical years where you are going to get pathophysiology integrated into your stations and your osces, to definitely get the Geeky Medics bundle of like osces and flashcards and stuff, because they are super helpful for knowing heart sounds, being able to see things, doing histories with when in year 3 when you get asked questions after your station, to be able to get them, do them within the time. They've got timers on there, they've got examiner sheets, patient sheets, student sheets, so you can literally emulate the whole entire osce in your own room with your friends, and it is such a cool concept, and it's probably the best way to prepare for osces. One thing I'd like to say is it's probably just a Sunderland thing, but we do a lot of A to E examinations in our osces, and I would hands down recommend quesmed in terms of their YouTube channel just for that. I think quesmed's A to E exams are literally what had carried me through my osces this year, because if not, I probably would have failed that station. But it does go through like everything. It gives you a bit of a structure to work through, and it does really help with the whole feeling a bit more zen before your osces and getting that like on the head, like hitting the nail on the head with the A to E's. Anyways guys, I hope that was a bit of a concise way of me telling you everything that has literally helped me through med school for the last 3 years. These are resources that I always go back to, that I'm always using to help reinforce my knowledge and get better at what I'm doing, and it's the best way to test yourself. And I think that's something you tend to lose in your preclinical years, but when you hit your clinical years, it's the best way to go about understanding the knowledge is to test yourself, and the resources that I mentioned clearly do help with that. So yeah, anyways, if you enjoyed this video, please give it a huge thumbs up and subscribe down below, and I will catch you guys soon for another video. Bye.